I had just landed in Seattle after a grueling week-long business trip when my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my 12-year-old son, Ethan. His voice trembled as he spoke. Mom, Aunt Clara said I had to leave the cabin. Uncle David made me go. Grandma and Grandpa didn't stop him. I stood frozen in the airport terminal, my heart sinking into my stomach. The cabin, our family cabin in the Cascade Mountains, the one I had paid to maintain for years. My brother David had kicked my son out, and my parents had let it happen. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Rage boiled inside me, but my mind sharpened. They thought I would break. They thought I would beg. They had no idea they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. My name is Laura Bennett. And at 40 years old, I had just endured the most ruthless betrayal of my life. Right now, David is probably sitting in that cabin, sipping coffee from mugs I bought, convinced he has finally erased me from the family. He thinks I am devastated, scrambling to get Ethan back, desperate to fix the damage he caused. He is wrong, because what David doesn't know is that I saw this coming. Unlike him, I don't act impulsively. I plan. He kicked my son out of the cabin we all shared. He made it clear neither of us were welcome. And my parents, they stood by and let it happen. They think I will come crawling back, that I will keep paying for the cabin's upkeep, that I will stay quiet like I always have. But this time, I am not crying. I am not begging. This time, I am taking everything. I called my lawyer, Anna Reed, as I walked to my car, my hands shaking, but my voice steady. Anna picked up on the second ring, her tone calm until I explained. Laura, she gasped. Are you saying David and your parents did this without warning? Yes, I whispered. She cursed under her breath. Don't sign anything, she warned. I will look into it. My mind raced. This couldn't be real. That night I lay awake, the weight of their betrayal sinking in. I had kept that cabin running, and this was my reward. I texted Anna again. What should I do? Her reply was quick. Meet me tomorrow. We will figure this out. As I stared at the ceiling, a fire ignited inside me. They thought they could erase me, but I was done being their doormat. Hook. My brother kicked my son out of our family cabin. Then I exposed his $1.5 million scam and took it all back. The next morning, I sat in Anna's office, the hum of Seattle traffic outside a distant echo to the storm in my mind. My thoughts drifted back to how it all began. At 40, I had spent years as a certified accountant, balancing my career with raising Ethan alone after my husband passed 5 years ago. The cabin in the Cascade Mountains had been our family's retreat since I was a child, a rustic haven of pine and lake views where we made memories. But 10 years ago, it started falling apart. The roof leaked, the plumbing failed, and the property taxes piled up. My parents couldn't afford the upkeep, and David, my older brother at 42, was too busy with his failing real estate ventures to care. So I stepped in. I paid for the repairs, the taxes, the utilities, everything. Over the years, I poured nearly $2,000 into that cabin, believing it was for the family. But that unity didn't last. David had always been the favored child. Growing up, he got the praise, the attention, and the support, while I was the responsible one, expected to handle everything. When I started paying for the cabin, Mom and Dad praised my efforts, but their words felt empty. David would show up for weekends, offering vague ideas about turning the cabin into a rental, and they would nod, as if he were the visionary. I ignored it, believing my hard work would speak for itself. Then 6 months ago, things shifted. Dad started having private talks with David. Their whispers about future plans growing louder. One evening, I overheard them by the lake. We can't keep relying on her money, David said, his voice low. We need to secure our future. Dad agreed, muttering about selling something big. I brushed it off, thinking it was about a business deal. but my gut twisted. Over the next few weeks, they stopped sharing financial updates, dodging my questions with smiles and excuses. The cabin's maintenance was my burden, yet I felt like an outsider. I would arrange repairs, and David would take credit his charm winning over Mom and Dad. The betrayal deepened when I caught David with a stranger at the cabin, a man in a suit, looking over property maps. I confronted him, but he laughed it off, saying, "Just exploring options, Laura." Mom defended him, patting my shoulder. "He's trying," she said. I let it slide my trust in them, blinding me to the truth. But last month, I noticed discrepancies in the cabin's tax records. Large payments I couldn't trace. I asked Dad, and he brushed me off with, "It's handled, Laura." The unease grew, but I buried it, focusing on my next project. Then came that voicemail from Ethan, shattering my world. I called my friend Mia Carter, a real estate agent I had known since college, my voice trembling. "Mia, something's wrong," I said. "David and my parents kicked Ethan out of the cabin." She paused, then asked, "What happened?" I told her about the voicemail, the years of support, and my suspicions about money. She sighed. "I've seen shady deals, Laura. Let me dig into it." I hung up, my mind racing. If they had betrayed me with the cabin, what else were they hiding? The answer was coming, and I was ready to face it. I drove to the cabin that night, the mountain air cold against my skin. I needed to see Ethan to understand how far they had gone. I arrived at the cabin just after midnight, the mountain road winding through dark pine forests. Ethan was staying with a neighbor, Clara, who had taken him in after David's cruelty. I knocked on her door, my heart pounding. Clara opened it, her face etched with worry. "Laura, thank goodness you're here," she said. "Ethan's inside. He's okay, but shaken." I stepped into her cozy living room and saw Ethan curled on the couch, a blanket around his shoulders. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but they were red from crying. "Mom," he whispered. I knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug. "I'm here, baby," I said, smoothing his hair. "What happened?" His voice trembled as he explained. "Uncle David said I couldn't stay. He said the cabin wasn't ours anymore. Grandma and Grandpa just watched. I tried to call you, but you were on the plane." My chest tightened. A 12-year-old boy alone in the mountains because my brother decided he wasn't welcome. I thanked Clara and took Ethan to my car, promising to return. As we drove to a nearby motel, I called Mia Carter, my voice steady, despite the rage inside. "Mia, I need to know what's going on," I said. "Ethan said David claimed the cabin isn't ours anymore." Mia sucked in a breath. "I was afraid of that," she said. I did some digging after we spoke. David's been meeting with the developer. He's planning to sell the cabin for $1.5 million. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. "What?" I whispered. She continued. "He's been working on this for months. The buyer wants to turn the land into a luxury resort. Your parents signed off on it." I stared at the road, my mind reeling. $1.5 million for a cabin I had kept alive. I had poured my savings into that place, believing it was for the family. And now, they were selling it out from under me. I checked into the motel, tucking Ethan into bed. He fell asleep quickly, exhaustion overtaking him, but I couldn't rest. The betrayal gnawed at me, fueling a desperate need to confirm Mia's findings. I drove back to the cabin after midnight, the stars bright above the mountains. The back door creaked as I slipped inside my flashlight, cutting through the dark. I headed to Dad's study, a room he always kept locked, but I knew the key was hidden in a drawer, a trick I had learned as a kid. My fingers fumbled, lifting the drawer, and there it was, a metal box. Inside, I found a contract, its pages crisp and dated last month. It detailed the sale of the cabin to Cascade Resorts for $1.5 million, signed by David and my parents. A separate note read, "Keep Laura out, she'll demand a share." My stomach churned. They had planned this, excluded me deliberately. I photographed every page, my hands trembling, and emailed them to myself and Mia with a note. "If anything happens, get these to a lawyer." I called Mia, The next morning, my voice steady. Mia, I found it, I said. A contract for $1.5 million. She sucked in a breath. That's theft, Laura. They can't do that. You're entitled to half. I nodded, my resolve hardening. I think Anna knows something I added. She agreed. Call her. Push her. I dialed Anna Reed, my pulse racing. Anna, I said when she answered, I've got proof. $1.5 million from the cabin sale. You knew, didn't you? There was a pause, then a sigh. I warned David and your parents this was illegal, she admitted. They sold the cabin, planning to cut you out and keep the profits. I told them if you found out it'd ruin them, but they thought you'd never check. My grip tightened. Why tell me now? I demanded. She chuckled dryly. I'm not going down with them. With that evidence, you'll win. You need your own lawyer. Who, I asked. Sophia Grant, she said. She's fierce. I spent the afternoon photographing more documents, saving them securely. David and my parents thought I was too soft to fight, but they were wrong. I was ready to take them down. The next morning, I met Sophia Grant at her Seattle office, a modern space with views of the Puget Sound. She reviewed the contract and photos I had brought, her expression darkening. This is solid, Laura, she said, tapping the papers. They sold the cabin without your consent. And the signatures prove intent to exclude you. My hands clenched. So what now, I asked. She leaned forward. We file a claim for half $75,000 plus damages. We'll freeze their accounts tomorrow. I nodded, a surge of power, replacing my fear. But there's more, I said, hesitating. Mia mentioned David, talking about future plans. Sophia raised an eyebrow. What kind? I explained how I had overheard him hinting at cutting my parents out after the sale. She frowned. That's leverage. We'll dig deeper. I left her office, my mind racing. If David was plotting against Mom and Dad, this could unravel their alliance. That afternoon, I called Anna again, my voice firm. Anna, I need the truth, I said. What else are they hiding? She sighed, her tone reluctant. David wanted the full $1.5 million, she confessed. He planned to ditch your parents after the deal, claiming he brokered it alone. My jaw dropped. So they're pawns, too. Anna chuckled. Looks like it. Sophia can use this. I thanked her, hanging up, a twisted satisfaction growing. David's greed might be his undoing. I met Mia later, her face alight with new findings. I tracked the buyer. She said, Cascade Resorts, paid through a shell company, but I got a name, Michael Evans, their CEO. He's meeting David next week. My pulse quickened. Can we get evidence? She nodded. I'll send someone to that meeting. We need to catch them in the act. I hugged her, grateful for her support. This was bigger than I had thought. The next day, Sophia called. We've frozen their accounts, she said. David is furious, calling me nonstop. Good, I replied. Let him squirm. She laughed. He's claiming you're overreacting, but the contract's airtight. I asked about the twist with my parents. She paused. If David betrays them, it could split them. We'll subpoena David's emails. I hung up my plan, taking shape. They thought I would fade away, but I was fighting back. That evening, I overheard David on the phone at the cabin, his voice low. Evans, we'll cut Mom and Dad out after the next payment, he said. My heart raced. I recorded it, sending the audio to Sophia. This is gold, she texted back. We'll use it. The next morning, I found a note on my car. Back off, Laura. No signature, but I knew it was David. Fear flickered, but anger won. I called Sophia again. They're threatening me, I said. She growled. We'll get a restraining order. You're not alone. As I prepared for the next step, a realization hit. David's betrayal of my parents could be my weapon. I spent the night organizing evidence, my hands steady. They had stolen my cabin, my legacy, but I was about to reclaim it all. The $1.5 million was mine to fight for, and their downfall was just beginning. The following week, I planned my revenge, knowing the cabin's auction was the perfect stage. David had invited family local buyers and developers, boasting about the sale to Cascade Resorts. I decided to turn their celebration into my reckoning. I called Sophia, my voice steady. I want to expose them at the auction, I said. She agreed. We'll have a lawyer there. Bring the evidence. The day arrived, the cabin's clearing buzzing with chatter, the air thick with the scent of pine and coffee. Mom and Dad mingled proud smiles on their faces, while David played the host, shaking hands like a king. I stood near the edge of the crowd, my heart pounding, a folder of documents clutched in my hands. As David took the stage to speak, I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise. Wait, I said loud enough to silence the crowd. Every eye turned to me, and David's smirk faded. What's this? He snapped. I held up the folder. This is the truth, I said. For years I paid to maintain this cabin, but last month you and our parents sold it for $1.5 million, cutting me out. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I opened the folder, displaying the contract. This proves it. You stole from me. Dad's face paled. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, but David lunged forward. That's a lie, he shouted. I brokered that deal. I shook my head, pulling out the audio recording. Listen, I said, playing it. His voice plotting with Evans filled the air. The crowd murmured, shocked. Sophia stepped up, her presence commanding. This is fraud, she declared. We're suing for Laura's share. The clearing erupted. Uncle Tom, Dad's brother, demanded answers, while Aunt Linda glared at David. You've shamed us, she hissed. Mom tried to intervene, her voice trembling. Laura, this is family business, but I cut her off. Family doesn't steal, I said, my voice rising. You used me, and now you'll pay. I'm taking my half $75,000, and I'm done. David's face turned red, his fists clenched. You'll regret this, he spat. But the damage was done. Buyers whispered, some leaving their trust in the sale shattered. I saw a crack in his confidence as a developer pulled David aside, his tone sharp. This changes things, the man said. I stepped back, my heart racing with triumph. This was my moment. Driving back to the motel, I replayed the scene, the looks of shock and shame fueling me. Sophia called, her voice excited. They're rattled, she said. We'll file tomorrow. I smiled, the first real one in days. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. She paused. If David betrays them, it could split them. We'll watch for it. I hung up, knowing the next move was mine. They had underestimated me, but I was no longer the quiet sister they could control. I looked at Ethan sleeping in the motel bed, his face peaceful for the first time in days. This was for him, for us, for the future they tried to steal. 2 days later, I was organizing Ethan's school supplies at the motel when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was from Michael Evans, the Cascade Resort CEO. Meet me at the diner, 3 p.m., it read. We need to talk. My stomach flipped, but curiosity drove me. I agreed, unsure what to expect. At the diner, Evans sat in a booth. His suit wrinkled, his expression tense. Laura, he said as I approached, I owe you an explanation. I crossed my arms. Start talking. He sighed. David promised me exclusive rights, but he's been negotiating with another buyer behind my back. I frowned. What does that mean? Evan's jaw tightened. He's trying to double sell the cabin. I'm out $1.5 million unless I act first. My mind raced. So, you're betraying him, I asked? Evans nodded. I'm pulling out, taking my money back. But I'll testify if you need it. I felt a surge of twisted satisfaction. David's greed had turned on him. Do it, I said. He agreed, handing me a recorded call where David admitted the second deal. I sent it to Sophia, my heart pounding. This is gold, she texted. We'll use it. The next day, David called, his voice desperate. Laura, please, he begged. Evans is dropping me, I can explain. I laughed cold and sharp. Explain, you've been playing everyone. I'm done. He pleaded, but I hung up, blocking his number. Sophia filed for an expedited hearing leveraging Evans' testimony. A week later, Mom confronted me at the motel, her face weary. "Laura, fix this," she said. "David is ruining us." I shook my head. "You chose him," I replied. "Now face the consequences." Mom's shoulders slumped, and I knew the twist had begun. David's betrayal of Evans and now my parents was unraveling their plan. The sweet taste of revenge filled me as their world crumbled under their own lies. I looked at Ethan playing outside the motel, a smile on his face. We were free, and David's downfall was just the beginning. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of the cabin, the scent of pine and lake water filling the air. Sunlight danced on the water, illuminating the space I had fought to reclaim. The court had ruled in my favor, awarding me the cabin and $75,000, half the $1.5 million plus $100,000 in damages. David and my parents lost the sale, their accounts frozen, while Evans' testimony sealed their fate. The family retreat was mine, and I was free. I had used my share to renovate the cabin, turning it into a true haven. New windows let in light, a modern kitchen replaced the old one, and the roof no longer leaked. Ethan helped me paint the walls, his laughter a balm to my soul. I had fought for this, and now it was ours. My accounting career thrived. I took on new clients working remotely from the cabin. One afternoon, a neighbor, Tom, a kind widower, lingered after helping with a repair. His quiet support over coffee turned into regular visits, and soon we were dating. His presence filled the void left by my family. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from David. "Laura, we're struggling," he wrote. "Can we talk?" I stared at the words, old pain flickering, but it faded fast. Where was his plea when he kicked Ethan out? I typed back. "No need, I've moved on." Then I blocked him, closing that chapter. Mom called next, her voice shaky. "Laura, help us." She begged. I sighed. "You made your choice," I said. "I've made mine." Aunt Clara, my mom's sister, visited that week, bringing homemade jam. "You're a new woman," she said, her eyes warm. I smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied. She had supported me through the legal battle, reminding me of my strength. We laughed about the future, about the cabin and the life I was building. I realized how far I had come from a betrayed sister to a thriving mother. True peace comes from reclaiming your own sanctuary, I thought, watching Ethan fish by the lake. David and my parents had thought they could erase me, but their theft had set me free. This cabin, my home, and the love filling my days were proof. I was no longer the woman who lived in their shadow. I was Laura, a mother, a survivor, and a woman who knew her value, and I would never let anyone take that away again. I never imagined a family retreat would reveal their betrayal and lead me to reclaim my worth. David and my parents stole my cabin, but I turned their scam into my victory, proving I'm stronger than they thought. Now I'm living a life I love, free from their control. Have you fought back against family betrayal? Share your story below to inspire others. If this tale of revenge and renewal resonated with you, hit subscribe and join me for more stories of rising above. Let's keep empowering each other to shine.